Parshat Acharei Mot and Kedushim. Acharei Mot dealing with the service of the Kohen Gadol, entering into the Kodesh Kedushim on Yom Kippurim, as well as the Kriya that we read on Yom Kippur, and that of the Arayos, the forbidden marriages. Parshat Kedushim ends with the Arayos as well, but details, and this is a very famous chapter, many laws, and particularly many interpersonal laws. And it seems to be like a random list of different halachas. I'd like to take a look in Mirz Hashem at one of these laws that seems to be, very simple and straightforward. But as we will in Mirz Hashem see today, that Chazal, the Medrash, learn a tremendous amount of insight from these laws. I'd like to take a look at quite a number of different ways that we can understand this halacha, and then try to be able to see what is the B'riach HaTachton, the thread that will connect all of these levels together. Chumash tells us in source 1, when you shall come to the land and you shall plant any fruit tree, you shall treat its fruit as forbidden. This is the law of Orla. For 3 years they shall be forbidden to you. They shall not be eaten. In the 4th year, all of its fruit shall be sanctified to Lord Hashem. And in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit, so that will increase its crop for you. I am Hashem, your God. And as the article points out, quoting Rashi in source 2, the 4th year is sanctified. The word teaches that Revi, 4th year fruit, is treated like that the Kodesh is like the second tithe, it's like Meiser Sheni. It must be safeguarded against contamination, eating Yerushalayim. If the owner lives outside the holy city, he may redeem the fruit for money, which he must bring to Yerushalayim and use to buy food, which he and his guests will eat there. And then there's a promise that the 5th year will have an increase in profit. As the Mefarshim point out, what is the reason why we're not allowed to eat fruit the first 3 years? So, and it's interesting, if we look in source number 5 for a moment, this law applies in Eretz Yisrael Midaraisa. It applies in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, as halacha l'Moshe miSinai, and it's still applicable. There are obviously differences, whether it's Midaraisa or halacha Moshe miSinai. Those differences we are not going to deal with. But the question still stands, what is the reason why we're not allowed to eat the fruit for the first 3 years? So the Rav Munk in the Kul of Torah in source 2 quotes the Rambam, who links this prohibition classically to certain pagan practices. The idolaters of old claimed that whenever one planted a fruit tree, he had to use a magic formula to speed the yield of fruit. I've already explained how much the law abhors all these magical practices. That's why it prohibits whatever the fruit tree produces for the 3 years from the day they were planted. The Ramban, a little bit differently, says the whole idea is to give the best to Hashem, is to give the reshit. The first 3 years you don't have the best crop. So the first 3 years we don't use the crop, we burn it, we get rid of it. The 4th year, like Bikurim, is Kodesh Lashem, we bring it to Shalayim. So that's that approach. Rash Moshe Feinstein notes that it's hard to understand why we would destroy fruit trees. And in order to, not the fruit trees, the fruit of the trees, and in order to show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves fruit, it indeed, the Torah goes out of its way that there will be multiple amounts of fruit on the 5th year, and he basically says it's a Gzeras HaKatuv. We don't understand why. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded, and this is what we do. An interesting remez, an interesting hint at the dynamics of year 3, 4, and 5. First 3 years, not to eat them. Year 4, to bring them to Shalayim Kodesh, they're called holy, and they have to be either eaten in Yerushalayim or redeemed, and with that money, eat the fruit in Yerushalayim. And the 5th year, you're allowed to eat whatever you want. So Kleyakar notes a very interesting remez in source 4, where he says we know that everything was really created on the first day, but then it came out into the world on the different days. So the fruit trees came out into existence on day number 3. But they weren't, sustained by the sun, etc., to give them light to the 4th day. and they were only eaten really on the 5th day when animals were created. So to mark the first 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, when they existed but were not able to be seen, that's the Orla. That's the first 3 years we don't touch them. The 4th year, which corresponds to the 4th day, is to be able to praise Hashem, the light, the energy that has come on these fruit trees. Only in the 5th, just like the animals were created that consume them, so too we eat it on the 5th year as well, enjoying its fruits. So he knows that this is a remez, it's a hint to Ma'aseh Breshit, to the original creation story. Having noted all of the above, on the most simplest level, it's a very clear-cut halacha. You come in Eretz Yisrael, according to the Rechaim HaKadosh, the asterisks in 5, this is that there are 3 mitzvahs here. Coming into the land is mitzvah 1, to plant all types of fruit trees in order to enhance the land is mitzvah number 2, and to keep the laws of Orla is mitzvah number 3. So, be that as it may, you come to the land, you plant fruit trees, and the first 3 years you don't eat them. Orla, this applies as well in Chutz La'aretz. You plant a fruit tree, you're not to enjoy its produce for the first 3 years, a lemon tree, an orange tree. The 4th year is Kodesh Hilulim LaHashem, and the 5th year is one you can enjoy its crops. I'd like to try to take a look at this, which seems to be so simple and so straightforward. We're talking about trees, we're talking about fruit trees, we're talking about sanctification, and to be able to see how our rabbis understand from this many, many different levels. And the study in itself is beautiful in seeing how rich any particular psukim can be. But I think what's going to be even more special in today's class of Mirat Hashem is to see the linkage between all the ideas. So instead of talking about it, let's do it. Approach level number 1. What do we learn from these psukim? What do Chazal derive from these psukim? So there's a beautiful piece in Rav Hirsch on Kodesh Hilulim. He says the fruit is not Kodesh LaHashem absolutely. Rather, its status or 6 is like that of Meiser Sheni, the second tie. It's Mamon Gavoa, only in that its enjoyment must lead to Hilulim to Hashem. That is to say, the fruit must reflect back a radiance of light, and he who partakes of it must contemplate God. In his enjoyment of the fruit, he is to give thanks to God, the giver of the Torah. For by God's providence, the tree yields its fruit, and his will should be done also in the enjoyment of fruit. And that's the whole idea of coming up to Shalayim, to make sure that man realizes that his efforts are not mere mechanical result of the laws of nature, but rather they depend on God's providence and blessing. And the sanctuary of the Torah sanctifies not only one's actions in life, but also one's enjoyment in life.